What is up, guys? Welcome back to my 25 Days of Flutter tutorial series. In this video, we are going to be taking a look at working with JSON. So per usual, I have a simple application. My class home is a stateful widget, and I am just setting the body to a container with a text JSON examples. A couple of other things I added. We have a models folder, and I have an assets folder. So you'll notice I have 5 JSON files. Each of these contains a different variation of JSON. So we're going to look at how we can parse through each of these 5 unique JSON files. The first one looks like this. So before we can start parsing through this, we need to open up pubspec.yaml, and around line 50, we need to add that to our assets section. Go ahead and uncomment these lines here, remove that one, and then we're just going to add assets/1.json. And we'll have to do this for each of our 5 files. So let's go ahead and do that now. All right, just like that, and I'll just give it a quick restart. So the first thing that we need to do is create a model class for this JSON. So you're going to want to go ahead and create a models folder, and inside of that, a file 1.dart. And that corresponds to 1.json. So I'm just going to drag this to the side, and in this file, we need to create a model, a class to hold this data. So let's say class 1, and we have 3 properties. So we have int ID, we have a string name, and a string gender. We'll declare our constructor, and then below that is where we can convert this from JSON to Dart using deserialization. So we can say factory 1 dot from JSON map string comma dynamic. Make sure that dynamic is inside of there. JSON, that's our variable, and then we will return 1, and inside of here we need to specify each of our properties. So we'll say ID is equal to JSON ID. So that's saying this ID here, when we parse the JSON, we are looking for this over here, which is right here. And then we have name, which is JSON name, and gender. Just like that. So this ID, name, and gender correspond to up here in the class, the Dart class, and this ID, this name, and this gender correspond to the JSON that we're bringing. All right, now that we have that, we can go into main.dart, and let's first import a couple of things. Let's say import, I'm going to copy this. We're going to import package flutter/services.dart. We're going to import Dart convert. We need to import the model package JSON, or the name of your project /models/1.dart. And we need to import Dart async. And then we'll say show future. Just like that. Now we can come down here, right beneath the first stateful widget home class. We're going to say future string load data. This will be an asynchronous method. Then we will return await root bundle dot load string assets/1.json. So we are grabbing our data with this method here. And then inside of our home state class, let's use that. So we'll say future load data async. We'll say string JSON string is equal to await load data. We'll say final JSON response is equal to JSON dot decode, passing in that JSON string, and then we'll say 1, so this is the class, is equal to new 1 dot from JSON, passing in our response, and we can access the ID, name, and gender from this variable here. So we can say print, and let's print out all of that. So we'll say first 1.name, and then we can do 1.id and 1.gender. Just like that. We need to call this function load data. So to do that, we will make an init state function or method. Inside of here, we will call super.init state and then our load data method. And if we open up a terminal, go to debug console and restart this, you should see that come through. Just like that. So that's the first type of data. So the second type of JSON looks something like this. We have this one, which is what we had in the first example, and then we have this list inside of the JSON. So let's see how we can handle that. Again, we're going to want to open up our model file, so we'll say 2.dart. Then we will create a class, say class 2. Inside of here, we have final string name. And now we have final list of type string classes. So that is the difference, this line here. And then we need to define our constructor. We'll say this dot name, and we can say this dot classes. And then just to speed this up a bit, I'm going to copy the this part from the first example. So let's go ahead and change this to 2 and change this to 2. So let's remove this ID. This name is fine. And then we'll say classes and classes. So now we are all set for this class. Back in main.dart, so let us go ahead and load the second JSON. And then we need to change, I'm going to comment out this and paste it below and then change it up. So we want to replace 1 with 2, and we need to import that class as well. And again, I'm keeping all the examples in here so you can look at the code on my GitHub. And then we can print out 2.name. And if I do 2 dot, we'll see classes. And if I try to do this, you'll notice that we are getting an error in here, saying that the types are not compatible. So to fix that, we need to come below or above the return statement, and let's say var classes from JSON equals JSON classes. So just like we have here. And then we need to add another step and convert that. So we'll say list of type string classes list is equal to JSON classes from JSON dot cast string. Just like that. Now we can set this class list to classes. And if we go back here, this should all be the same. So let's give it a refresh. And there we go. We get the name, we get calc 3 and data structures and algorithms. And if we go back here, that is the first element and the last element and the second element. And we are calling the first and the second. So I can add one more to get all of those. Change that to 2, refresh. And there we go. All right, so on to our third type of JSON. As you can see, we have ID, name, and then similarly to the last one, we have this kind of list, but instead of a list, it is JSON braces. Let's go ahead and create our model. First, we're going to make a class for our property. So we'll say class property. We have double width and double height. Create our constructor. This dot width, this dot height. Next, we need the class for everything. So we'll go beneath here and say class 3. This will be int ID, string name, and then we need our constructor. This dot ID, this dot name. And then back in our property class, we can say factory property dot from JSON map string comma dynamic JSON. We will return property width will be JSON width and height will be JSON height, just like that. Then here in class 3, we need to call this class. So it's going to be similar to this. So let me go ahead and copy and paste this. Change this to 3 and this to 3. And then we need this to be name, JSON name. We have an ID, which will be JSON ID. And then we also need to add property to this class. So we can say property, just like that. Throw that into our constructor. And then we can use it down here. And that will be equal to property dot from JSON property, just like that. And then just like we've been doing, we'll come back into main.dart, comment this out, paste it below, import our third model, change this to 3 and this to 3. Let's rename this to 3. And then we need dot ID. We have dot name. Dot property. Dot height. And 3 dot property dot width. Just like that. Now we'll go ahead and refresh and see if we get that output. Okay, it looks like width was called on null. So I'm wondering if we have a typo somewhere. And I just realized that the error is because we did not change this to 3. So do that and now it should work. All right, perfect. There we go. So that is it for this video, guys. So we covered the first 3 examples here, and in the next video, we are going to cover the last 2, which are a bit more complex.